He reached down with his other hand and grabbed that atheist and stopped him. Nowhere to go, the atheist said, "Oh God, would you help me?" And that shows mankind's need for God. There is a God.
What's up, Patricia? I'm DallasWade, and welcome back to another worship service. Today, we are going to be looking at yet another video from the one and only Chaplain Michael Reece.
What's up, parishioners? Chaplain Reece here, and if God did it for me, He can do it for you too.
I know this is how you start every one of your videos, but what is it exactly that God did for you that He can also do for me?
Whatever it is.
Oh, okay, that clears things up. Thank you.
I wanted to encourage you today to not give up on an atheist.
But Michael, what is an atheist?
Someone who says that there is no God.
Okay, well, that's a perfectly fine description of what an atheist is. I know plenty of people, including many atheists, use that description, but I know myself and many others use the term atheist a little bit more broadly, just to include people who don't believe in God rather than just exclusively people who say that there actively is absolutely no God. I guess according to your description, I would be considered an agnostic, which is perfectly fine. I don't care either way. I try not to argue over these definitions because I don't see it being very beneficial, very salubrious. But for the sake of this video, we will use your description because I don't care.
Many times we hear them say that and we completely give up on them.
But why? Why do you give up on them?
There's no use in trying to witness to them or win them.
But why would you do that?
Because they're stuck in their beliefs, and many times that's true.
Why would you assume that someone is stuck in their beliefs when they have literally done nothing more than simply tell you what their beliefs are? That is extremely presumptuous. And if you are giving up on someone immediately after finding out that they are an atheist, then it sounds like you just don't want to talk to atheists. And you saying that they are stuck in their beliefs is just an excuse that you're throwing out there so you can avoid having to talk to atheists. That's pretty crappy.
But I want to tell you a story.
Oh boy, it's another story from Chaplain Michael Reece. Is this going to be another story about some anonymous atheist in some anonymous location that took place during some unknown period of time?
I want to tell you a story about an atheist who had admitted that he believed that there was a God.
And I bet this story is every bit as true as your last one.
My pastor...
Oh hey, the story's going to be about Michael's personal pastor. That's an improvement. That's a secondhand story rather than an email copy pasta from 3 decades ago. Good job, Michael. You are improving.
My pastor has been a roofer for many years. His family is roofers.
Well, isn't that just a funny little coincidence? Because it just so happens that I have been framing and roofing houses for over 12 years.
Once there was his uncle who is a roofer.
Okay, so this story is about Michael's personal pastor's uncle and not Michael's personal pastor. So it's a third-hand story rather than a second-hand story, but I guess it's still better than an email copy pasta from 3 decades ago. So, you know, it's still better than it was last time.
And another man who were working on the roof of a house. It was a very, very steep roof. Steep roofs are dangerous.
Yeah, steep roofs definitely are dangerous, especially if you don't know what you're doing. If you ever are on a steep roof, you should make sure you wear some good tennis shoes like some Merrells and lace them up really tight so they don't slide off of your feet. And you should also definitely, most importantly, make sure you use plenty of toe boards and nail or screw them into the rafters. Those toe boards are not going to hold if they are only nailed into the deck. You know, the plywood or the OSB, you have to hit the rafters. Those toe boards are not going to hold if they aren't nailed into the rafters. That is like the most important part. And if you still aren't comfortable on the roof, or if the roof is steeper than maybe a 12 pitch, you should probably consider using a harness system. That way, even if you do fall, you know that you're not going to die. Most likely.
They had a 2x4 that was nailed to that roof, and they were sort of leaned on the steep roof while their feet was on the 2x4.
Yeah, that's what we call a toe board.
And they were working. All of a sudden, pastor's uncle and the atheist, as they were working, the nails in the 2x4 began to slip out. And as they were slipping out, that 2x4 began to turn over and come down until it came completely out and rolled down the steep roof.
That should never happen, and it won't happen if you actually hit the rafters with your nails or your screws, which you should do. And if you don't know how to find a rafter, or worse yet, if you don't know what a rafter is, then you probably shouldn't be on a roof.
Well, they didn't have anything to grab a hold to or anything to do to keep them on the roof, so they were sliding down.
Wait, hold up. You're telling me that professional roofers didn't have anything to grab onto or any safety point to slide down to? Professional roofers, guys who've been doing this for years. That doesn't make any sense. There should never be any point during the time that you are roofing a house that you don't have either something to grab onto or a safety point to slide down to.
And as they were sliding down very slowly, nowhere to go, the atheist said, "Oh God, would you help me?" He cried out to God.
First and foremost, I highly doubt that this is actually a direct quote from this atheist roofer guy, because this is your interpretation of your personal pastor's interpretation of his uncle's interpretation of whatever it was that this atheist roofer guy was screaming while he was falling off the roof. That is a lot of opportunities for the story to be paraphrased and exaggerated over each iteration. And it's also not unreasonable or inconceivable to imagine that there could easily be some religious bias or agenda at play each time the story gets told, since it is a story coming from Christians about an atheist. And even if we put all of that aside and take Chaplain Reece's story at face value, which you should never do, but even if we do that, the quote that Chaplain Reece is attributing to this atheist guy isn't that far off from what I would be saying if I was in that situation. If I was in this situation, I would be saying something like, "Oh God, why didn't I nail this toe board into the rafters?" Or maybe, "Oh God, what am I doing out in the middle of a roof with no other toe boards above me or below me?" Or maybe even, "Oh God, why did I use 2-inch nails instead of some 3-inch saber drive screws?" And that would not be me crying out to God, asking him why he didn't remind me how to roof a house properly and safely. That would just be me using expletives out of frustration while I was falling to my almost certain death, which is almost certainly what this atheist roofer guy was doing in this situation in Chaplain Reece's totally realistic story.
About that time, Pastor's uncle reached back behind him. He grabbed his claw hammer. He slammed it in the roof of that house. He reached down with his other hand and grabbed that atheist and stopped him. Saved their lives, or saved them from getting a broken leg, broken back, whatever.
I have a slight suspicion that the story is slightly exaggerated. I don't believe that this happened, or if it did happen, it wasn't this exciting. Now, it is completely possible to take the claw of your hammer and stab it into the decking of the roof and catch yourself if you're falling, but only if the decking is OSB and not plywood, because if it was plywood, you would be totally screwed. But at the very least, the roof of that house would be much less susceptible to hail damage, so, there's that. But you know what's more epic than saving yourself with the claw of your hammer? Actually nailing your toe board into the rafters.
But the atheist called out to God.
I highly doubt it, but even if he did, that wouldn't mean that he secretly believed in God. He might have just been doing it because, well, he didn't have any other option, so why not? What's the harm? But again, it is much more likely that even if this atheist was screaming out, "Oh God," he wasn't actually crying out to some deity. He was probably just using it as an expletive because he was falling to his almost certain demise.
They got help. Someone put a ladder up there, put a new board up there, whatever. They got down.
Again, you're missing important details to the story, just like last time.
A couple of college students, or a few college students.
Michael, if you are going to be telling stories, I would like to know all of the important details of the stories and not just the parts that push your agenda. I want to know how long these two guys were hanging on that roof and how they got somebody to come help them. I want to know how they got off the roof. And most importantly, I want to know why those two guys didn't nail their toe boards into the rafters.
And later on, that uncle looked over at that atheist and said, "I thought you was an atheist and you didn't believe in God. I heard you call out to God for help."
And what did the atheist say in response?
So basically, you've heard the phrase before, there's no atheist in a foxhole.
And of course, you don't know what the atheist said in response. That's great. Sounds like a super realistic story that totally happened and totally wasn't twisted or exaggerated. Yeah. Also, the whole thing about there being no atheists in the foxholes is just totally untrue, whether you mean it literally or figuratively. Because as a matter of fact, there are plenty of atheists who are serving or who have served in the military, some of which I know personally and some of which are here on YouTube. YouTube. And then even if you do mean it figuratively, as in there are no atheists when life gets rough or when you experience some difficult or tragic thing in life, that's just totally not true. I have been in plenty of scary and dangerous and tough situations in life, and at no point in those situations do I start crying out to some god or asking for supernatural assistance. So you are just flat out wrong, Chaplain Michael Reece. I have a feeling that you don't actually know any atheists, and I know as a matter of fact that you never talk to atheists since you admitted that yourself. So it's pretty stupid that you make videos about atheists when the only knowledge of atheists that you actually have are from third, fourth, fifth, or 10th hand stories, which are unreliable at best and completely untrue at worst.
And that shows mankind's need for God.
Except it doesn't, because it's not true.
And we don't only need God right now, but we need God in eternity.
You know, you kind of need to prove that this God actually exists first before you really have the proper authority to start telling people that they need this God, because otherwise you're kind of just talking out of your ass.
So if you've got someone that you know that says that they are an atheist,
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
don't give up on them, because deep down inside there's something that tells them and lets them know that there is a God.
Nope, that's just not true. I don't know deep down inside, or even just below the surface, that there is a God. And it's not because I don't want there to be a God, it's simply because nobody has ever demonstrated that a God actually does exist. And the people who do try to prove it either don't understand what they're talking about, or they're just straight up dishonest. Like you. And it's not like I think it's impossible for some godlike deity to exist out there. There very well may be some sort of entity that somewhat vaguely resembles what we imagine as a god. It's entirely possible that something like that does exist out there, but we just don't have any evidence or proof that it does. And maybe one day that evidence will come about, or maybe it is around and nobody's just found it, or maybe I just haven't found it, and maybe one day I will, and maybe one day I will believe that some sort of a god does exist. But honestly, it's not going to make much of a difference for you, because that God is not going to be your God from your Bible, because your God and your Bible are every bit as fictional as the stories that you tell your viewers on your YouTube channel. So yeah, is there anything you would like to add to that, Chaplain Michael Reece?
There is a God. This is Chaplain Reece signing off.
Well, okay then. That was kind of an awkward way to end the video. Yeah. I'll see you all in the next worship service.